Mark Muller stood at the edge of the drop zone, his eyes scanning the dense, forbidding jungle that stretched before him like a great green ocean. The air was thick with humidity, each breath feeling like a mouthful of warm, wet cotton. Behind him, the rest of his centuria bustled with activity, checking weapons, adjusting armor, exchanging the dark, gallows humor that was the currency of soldiers on the front lines. For Mark, this pre-mission ritual was a familiar dance, one he had performed countless times over the decade he had spent fighting the Crunchies on Gustro 11. Crawler Prime, the grunts called it, a bitter acknowledgement of the planet's true masters, the innumerable, insectoid horrors that seethed beneath its lush canopy. As he performed the well-rehearsed motions of checking his plasma rifle, Mark's mind wandered to the briefing that had brought them to this forsaken patch of jungle. High Command had identified a major Crunchy hive in a deep ravine a few clicks to the north. Aerial scans had revealed a seething mass of the creatures, a roiling, chitinous sea that pulsed with malevolent life. The hive had been designated a priority target, and Mark's Centuria had drawn the short straw. It was a familiar story, one that had played out 100 times before on 100 different battlefields. The Drydus Confederation, in its relentless push to claim the rich resources of Crawler Prime, would identify a Crunchy stronghold. The Marines would be sent in to clear it out, to burn and blast and carve their way through the alien hordes. And the Crunchies, with the mindless ferocity of the insect swarms they so resembled, would fight back, exacting a bloody price for every inch of ground. Mark had seen too many friends, too many brothers and sisters in arms, fall to the Crunchies' claws and mandibles. He had seen their bodies, broken and mangled, left to rot in the fetid depths of the jungle. And he had seen the toll it took on those who survived, the haunted looks, the 1,000-yard stares, the nightmares that no amount of stim tabs or neuro scrubs could erase. But he had also seen the moments of triumph, the hard-won victories that made the sacrifices seem worthwhile. He had seen the Drydus flag raised over conquered hives, had heard the cheers of his comrades as they celebrated another step towards the ultimate goal, the complete subjugation of Crawler Prime and its integration into the growing Drydus Confederation. It was this thought that sustained Mark as he boarded the transport that would carry them to the drop zone near the ravine. As the craft lifted off, skimming low over the jungle canopy, he looked out at the endless expanse of green, broken only by the scars of old battlefields and the gleaming wrecks of downed spacecraft. Somewhere below that emerald sea, he knew, the Crunchies awaited, ready to spill human blood for every inch of soil. But he also knew that he and his comrades were ready to make them pay dearly for it. They were Drydus Marines, the finest warriors in the galaxy, and they would not rest until Crawler Prime was cleansed of the Crunchy scourge. As the transport hurtled towards the drop zone, Mark felt the familiar mix of fear and anticipation that always preceded a mission. He checked his rifle one last time, muttering a quiet prayer to the gods of war. Beside him, his squad mates did the same, their faces grim, their eyes hard with determination. They were entering the green hell of Crawler Prime, a world where every step could be their last, where the very air seemed charged with malice. But they were Drydus, and they would not falter. For glory, for duty, for the dream of a galaxy united under human rule, they would fight. And they would win. The transport shuddered as it dropped into the turbulence above the ravine. Mark braced himself, his heart pounding, his senses razor-sharp. The battle was about to begin, and he was ready. Ready to face the nightmare, ready to carve his name in the annals of Drydus history. The green hell awaited, and Mark Muller walked willingly into its embrace, a soldier of Drydus, a warrior without fear. The transport settles to the ground at the edge of the ravine, the sudden stillness after the roar of the engines almost eerie. Mark is the first one out, his boots sinking into the soft, loamy soil, his rifle sweeping the perimeter. Behind him, the rest of the Centuria disembarks, fanning out into a defensive formation. The jungle presses in around them, a wall of green, broken only by the yawning chasm of the ravine ahead. The air is thick with the stench of decay, the buzz of alien insects, and the distant, unsettling chittering of the Crunchies. Mark can feel the weight of the place, the sense of ancient, primal malevolence that seems to seep from every vine and leaf. But there's no time for contemplation. The mission clock is ticking, and the hive awaits. Mark signals to his squad, and they begin their descent into the ravine, the walls rising up on either side like the jaws of some great primordial beast. As they pick their way down the treacherous slope, the signs of crunchy activity become more and more apparent. The ground is pockmarked with holes, some small enough to swallow a foot, others large enough to engulf a man whole. Strange, organic structures cling to the ravine walls, pulsing and quivering like diseased organs, and everywhere the chittering grows louder, a constant, maddening backdrop to their progress. Halfway down the ravine, they encounter the first of the bodies. Drydus soldiers, their armor shattered, their flesh ravaged by crunchy claws. Some are recent kills, their blood still sticky on the ground. Others are little more than skeletons, picked clean by the scavengers of this nightmarish ecosystem. Mark grits his teeth and presses on, the grim calculus of the Crawler Prime campaign ringing in his head. 15 dead crunchies for every fallen Drydus. It's a brutal equation, but one that must balance if the planet is ever to be claimed. As they reach the bottom of the ravine, the true scale of the hive becomes apparent. The walls are honeycombed with tunnels, each one a dark, glistening maw leading into the depths of the crunchy stronghold. The ground writhes with the movement of countless insects, a living carpet of chitin and malice. Mark feels a moment of almost overwhelming dread. To enter those tunnels is to descend into hell itself, to confront an enemy that knows no fear, no mercy, no concept of defeat. But he is Drydus, and he will not falter. He signals to his centuria, and as one, they ready their weapons, the soft whine of charging plasma rifles filling the fetid air. And then, all hell breaks loose. From every tunnel, every crevice, the crunchies come, a seething tide of claws and mandibles and chitinous plates. They swarm over the ravine floor, up the walls, even dropping from the overhanging vines. It's a nightmare given form, a living deluge of alien horror. Mark opens fire, his rifle bucking in his hands, the air filled with the stench of ozone and seared chitin. Beside him, his comrades do the same, the ravine echoing with the roar of Drydus firepower. Crunchies explode in showers of ichor, their severed limbs twitching on the ground. But for every one that falls, 2 more surge forward, an inexhaustible tide of insectoid fury. The battle rages, minutes stretching into hours, each second an eternity of blood and fire and desperate, close-quarters savagery. Mark loses track of time, loses track of everything but the rhythm of the fight, the endless cycle of aim, shoot, reload, repeat. His armor is pitted and scarred, his body a map of bruises and minor wounds. But still he fights, a berserker rage driving him on, a primal, savage joy in the purity of combat. Around him, his comrades fall, some dragged screaming into the tunnels, others simply vanishing beneath the chitinous tide. The ravine floor grows slick with blood and ichor, the air thick with the stench of death. But still the Drydus line holds, a bastion of human defiance against the crunchy hordes. And then, just as it seems that the tide must surely overwhelm them, Mark hears the most beautiful sound in the universe, the deep, throaty roar of Drydus reinforcements. Dropships thunder overhead, disgorging fresh troops, their weapons already spitting fire. Heavy armor rumbles down the ravine, crushing crunchies beneath its treads, its cannons roaring in a glorious symphony of destruction. The tide turns, the crunchies falling back before the renewed Drydus onslaught. Mark and his surviving comrades press forward, their battle cries ringing out over the din of combat. They fight their way to the tunnel mouths, pouring fire and fury into those dark, noxious depths. The very ground shakes with the force of their assault, the ravine walls trembling as if in fear of Drydus' wrath. And finally, after an eternity of blood and horror, it is over. The last of the crunchies retreat, scurrying back into the depths of their shattered hive. The ravine is silent once more, save for the groans of the wounded and the sizzle of cooling plasma rifles. Mark stands amidst the carnage, his armor blackened, his face streaked with sweat and grime. He looks around at the devastation, the piles of crunchy dead, the shattered remnants of his centuria. It's a victory, he knows, a crucial step in the campaign to claim Crawler Prime. But the cost, as always, has been high. As the medics move in, tending to the wounded, Mark allows himself a moment of grief for the fallen. He thinks of the friends he has lost, the brave soldiers who gave their lives on this nightmarish battlefield. Their sacrifice will not be forgotten, he vows. Their names will be inscribed in the annals of Drydus glory. But there is little time for mourning. The hive is breached, but not yet fully conquered. There are tunnels to clear, crunchies to hunt, a final victory to secure. Mark knows that the hardest fighting is likely still to come, that the true heart of the hive, where the crunchy queen resides, still awaits them. But he is ready. His rifle is recharged, his resolve unshaken. He is Drydus, a warrior forged in the crucible of countless battles, and he will not rest until the ravine, and all of Crawler Prime, is cleansed of the crunchy scourge. With a final, silent salute to the fallen, Mark turns and strides towards the tunnel mouth, his comrades falling in behind him. The darkness awaits, and with it, the final battle for the ravine of death. But Mark does not fear the darkness. He embraces it, for he knows that it is in the darkness that the light of Drydus' valor shines brightest. And so, into the depths he descends, a champion of humanity, a bringer of light to the darkness. The crunchies will learn to fear that light, to tremble at the coming of the Drydus legions. For where Drydus walks, victory follows, and inevitable as the turning of the stars. The ravine of death will be conquered, and Mark Muller will be the one to conquer it. Such is the way of Drydus, now and forever. The depths of the crunchy hive are a nightmare made manifest, a labyrinth of twisting, organic tunnels pulsing with the foul lifeblood of the alien swarm. Mark leads his battle-weary Centuria into this hellscape, their plasma rifles casting eerie shadows on the slime-slick walls. Stay tight, Mark growls over the comm, his voice a beacon of gruff authority amidst the chittering darkness. Watch your corners, watch your corners, watch your mates. We're not leaving until this hive is a smoking ruin. The Centuria responds with a chorus of affirmatives, the voices of the soldiers tinged with a mix of fear and grim determination. They've come too far, lost too much, to falter now. The deeper they push into the hive, the fiercer the resistance becomes. Crunchies pour from every crevice, their numbers seemingly endless. The tunnels echo with the roar of plasma fire and the shrieks of dying bugs, the air thick with the acrid stench of burnt chitin. Grenade Mark bellows as a chittering swarm surges towards them. He lobs a plasma charge into their midst, the resulting explosion shaking the tunnel, showering the Centuria with bits of seared crunchy. But still the bugs come, driven by a single, overriding imperative: protect the queen. Mark knows that if they can reach the breeding chamber, if they can kill the bloated monstrosity at the heart of the hive, the crunchy threat on Crawler Prime will be broken forever. Sarge, it's Corporal Velasquez, Mark's right hand, her voice tight with urgency. I'm picking up a massive heat signature, 200 meters ahead. It's got to be the queen. Mark nods, a grim smile playing across his battle-scarred features. Then that's where we're going. Drydus, with me. For glory and the Confederation. The Centuria roars their ascent, a primal battle cry that seems to shake the very foundations of the hive. They surge forward, their weapons blazing, cutting a path of destruction through the crunchy horde. The final 100 meters are the hardest, a nightmare gauntlet of slashing claws and spraying acid. Mark's armor is pitted and melted, his body a tapestry of wounds. But he presses on, his will unbreakable, his purpose clear. And then, suddenly they are there. The breeding chamber is a vast, domed cavern, its walls lined with pulsating egg sacs. And there, in the center, is the queen, a towering monstrosity of chitin and malice, her massive head swiveling to face the intruders. Fire at will. Mark roars, and the chamber erupts with the fury of Drydus weaponry. Plasma bolts slam into the queen's armored hide, the air shimmering with the heat of their passage. The queen rears back, a deafening shriek erupting from her mandibles. She lashes out with her scythe-like claws, each one capable of shearing a man in half. Drydus soldiers scatter, some caught and torn asunder in a spray of blood, others vaporized by the queen's acid spray. But Mark stands firm, pouring fire into the monster's gaping maw. For Drydus he bellows, an invocation and a challenge all in one. And then, miraculously, the queen staggers, a gaping wound visible in her neck. Mark sees his chance, sees it with the instinct of a born warrior. He leaps forward, his plasma rifle abandoned, a vibroblade humming to life in his fist. With a cry that is part pain, part exultation, Mark plunges the blade into the Queen's eye, the razor-sharp edge sinking deep into her brain. The Queen convulses, her death throes shaking the chamber like an earthquake. And then, with a final, shuddering gasp, she is still. A stunned silence descends, broken only by the hum of Mark's blade and the ragged breathing of the surviving Drydus soldiers. And then, a cheer goes up, a roar of triumph that seems to shake the very walls. "Sarge, you crazy bastard!" Velasquez laughs, clapping Mark on the shoulder. "You did it. You killed the fragging Queen." Mark nods, his face a mask of blood and grime, his eyes alight with the fire of victory. "We did it," he corrects. "Drydus did it. This is a victory for the Confederation, for all of humanity." But even as they savor their triumph, the reality of their losses sinks in. More than half the Centuria lies dead, their bodies strewn across the nightmare battlefield of the Hive. Each one a hero, each one a sacrifice on the altar of Drydus glory. "We won't forget them," Mark says softly, his voice heavy with the weight of command. "We'll make sure their names are remembered, their deeds celebrated. They died for Drydus, and Drydus will honor them." The surviving soldiers nod, their faces grim, their eyes haunted by the horrors they've witnessed. But beneath the grief, there is pride too. Pride in their victory, in their unwavering devotion to the cause of the Confederation. As they make their way out of the shattered Hive, stepping over the corpses of the fallen, Mark reflects on the price of their triumph. It's a price measured in blood and sacrifice, in lives cut short and dreams unfulfilled. But it's a price that must be paid if Drydus is to claim its destiny among the stars. For Crawler Prime is just one world, one battle in a war that spans the galaxy. There will be other hives, other queens, other worlds to conquer and cleanse, and Drydus will be there, always to meet each challenge with fire and steel and an unbreakable will. Mark emerges from the ravine to a scene of organized chaos. Medics tend to the wounded, tech priests bless the wrecked armor and weapons, fresh troops secure the perimeter. It's the aftermath of victory, the gears of the Drydus war machine turning ever onward. Sergeant Muller, it's a voice Mark recognizes, a voice that carries the weight of high command. He turns to see Colonel Various, his battle-scarred face a map of the wars he's fought. A word, if you will. Mark nods, snapping a salute. "Of course, sir." "Your Centuria's actions today were exemplary," Various says, his voice gruff but tinged with respect. "The Queen's death will throw the Crunchies into disarray, make our job of cleansing this world that much easier. You and your soldiers have done Drydus a great service." "Thank you, sir," Mark says, the words tasting like ashes in his mouth. "But the credit belongs to those who fell. They gave everything for the glory of Drydus." Various nods, his eyes distant, as if seeing the faces of all the soldiers he's lost across a lifetime of war. "As is the way of Drydus," he murmurs, "their sacrifice will be remembered." He claps Mark on the shoulder, his grip firm, his gaze piercing. "But we must look to the future, Sergeant. The war for Crawler Prime is far from over. We will need soldiers like you, leaders like you, if we are to see it through to the end." Mark feels the weight of those words, the burden of duty and honor that comes with the uniform of Drydus. He knows that there will be more battles, more sacrifices, more friends lost to the pitiless calculus of war. But he also knows that he will meet each challenge head-on, with the courage and conviction that defines a Drydus warrior. "I understand, sir," he says, his voice firm with resolve. "Drydus will not falter. We will fight on, until Crawler Prime and all the worlds beyond are ours, for the glory of the Confederation and the memory of the fallen." Various nods, a flicker of pride in his battle-hardened eyes. "Well said, Sergeant. Now, see to your soldiers. Celebrate your victory, honor your dead, for tomorrow the war continues." As Various strides away, barking orders and rallying troops, Mark looks out over the ravine, the site of their greatest triumph and their deepest sorrow. The jungle is already reclaiming the scars of battle, the resilient growth of Crawler Prime covering the signs of war. But the memory of this day, Mark knows, will endure. In the annals of Drydus history, in the hearts of those who fought and bled on this alien soil. The Battle of the Ravine will live forever, a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity in an unforgiving universe. And Mark Muller, the soldier who became a legend, will lead the charge into the battles to come, a beacon of Drydus valor in the face of any foe. For such is the way of the Confederation, now and always. Glory to Drydus, and death to its enemies. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to leave it a like. If you'd like to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.